The royal rule shaping Princess Leonor's future as Spain's queen. The palace courtyard is silent at dawn, marble cool beneath polished shoes, flags hanging still as Princess Leonor, Princess of Asturias, steps forward into the light, her posture calm, her expression measured, and in that single moment you can almost see centuries of expectation standing beside her, unseen but unmistakable. This is not merely a young woman beginning another official day, this is the future Queen of Spain moving within rules written long before she was born. Every gesture matters, every choice echoes, and the stakes surrounding her future are far greater than they first appear to everyone watching closely. Because from this point forward, Princess Leonor does not walk alone. She carries the continuity and stability of Spain's monarchy for generations to come, a responsibility embedded in law, tradition, and public trust. These expectations are not symbolic decorations, they are structural supports holding an institution steady in a modern democratic state. Marriage, education, public conduct, even silence itself are shaped by this framework. And while the world may see elegance and youth, the crown sees preparation, restraint, and a future that cannot afford improvisation. That is where the tension truly begins, and few ever notice it until much later. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because the rules shaping Princess Leonor's future are not whispered myths or tabloid inventions, but clearly defined boundaries designed to protect legitimacy. Spain's constitution quietly governs the private lives of those closest to the throne, turning personal milestones into matters of state. This means love, timing, and choice operate within limits most people never face. But you have to wonder, what happens when a future queen's personal hopes meet the unyielding structure of constitutional duty and can either bend or break under pressure in moments hidden from public view that history later judges harshly? To understand these expectations, you have to look beyond ceremonies and into the institutional memory of Spain itself. The monarchy exists because it provides continuity, neutrality, and symbolic unity within a democratic system. It survives not through popularity alone, but through predictability and restraint. Every heir is trained to embody these values long before assuming power. Princess Leonor's upbringing, education, and public presence reflect this system at work, quietly aligning her personal development with the long-term needs of the state. This alignment is deliberate, continuous, and rarely explained openly even to audiences watching closely worldwide from afar and nearby today. In the modern era, this preparation has intensified, not relaxed. Public trust in institutions is fragile, and monarchies survive only when they demonstrate discipline. Princess Leonor is therefore raised with an acute awareness that her life carries consequences beyond herself. Media coverage emphasizes duty over personality, responsibility over spontaneity. This is intentional. By limiting speculation and avoiding excess familiarity, the crown preserves authority. But beneath that calm surface lies a constant calculation about perception, timing, and the invisible rules guiding every future step long before major decisions ever arrive in public view or private moments of consequence yet unseen ahead. This brings us to the first subtle clue: body language. Watch how Princess Leonor stands, listens, and responds during official moments. There is composure without stiffness, confidence without dominance. These traits are trained, reinforced, and monitored. They signal readiness to operate within constraint rather than impulse. Such discipline suggests a life already shaped by non-negotiable expectations. And you have to ask yourself, if posture and expression are guided so carefully, how much freedom truly exists when the cameras are gone from daily routines to future-defining decisions that shape the monarchy itself for decades ahead without public awareness or debate. The second clue appears in documented media reporting, particularly what is not said. Coverage surrounding Princess Leonor avoids conjecture, romance, or personality-driven narratives. Instead, it focuses on training, education, and constitutional role. This absence is meaningful. It reflects an agreement between institution and press to protect legitimacy by avoiding premature stories. Silence becomes a tool. In this environment, expectations are reinforced through omission as much as declaration, shaping public understanding without inviting controversy or distraction that could destabilize trust in the crown during a critical period of preparation for Spain's future queen and the institution she represents nationally and internationally. The third clue lies in protocol, the quiet architecture of monarchy. Protocol determines access, appearance, timing, and association. It limits spontaneity while maximizing stability. For Princess Leonor, protocol is not restriction but roadmap, guiding her through expectations that will only intensify. This structure ensures continuity across reigns, regardless of personality. It is why individual preference never outweighs institutional need. But at this stage, protocol also serves another function, preparing the public to accept limits as necessary rather than oppressive within a constitutional democratic framework that values stability over unpredictability during moments of transition between generations of leadership within the crown. Together, these clues reveal a system already in motion, shaping outcomes long before choices appear visible. Princess Leonor's future is being aligned carefully with Spain's expectations, step by step. This is where royal rules quietly operate, not as punishment but as protection. They safeguard continuity while limiting risk. Yet you have to wonder, when preparation becomes destiny, how much space remains for personal desire inside a role defined by history, law, and collective memory shared across generations of the Spanish state and entrusted to a single heir under constant public scrutiny from home and abroad in modern times still unfolding. As this chapter draws toward its turning point, one truth becomes clear: nothing about Princess Leonor's future is accidental. The rules shaping her path exist to ensure that when she one day becomes queen, Spain recognizes continuity rather than rupture. These foundations are being laid quietly, deliberately, and without spectacle. And while much remains unseen, the direction is unmistakable. Because the real test begins here, not with ceremony, but with how preparation today determines legitimacy tomorrow for the monarchy and the nation alike under growing global attention as expectations steadily rise around the future Queen of Spain and her reign. The atmosphere shifts as the story moves beyond preparation and into expectation, because rules do not exist in isolation, they exist to guide outcomes long before decisions are made public. Princess Leonor, Princess of Asturias, is growing into a role defined by continuity rather than choice, and the crown understands that anticipation must be managed as carefully as action itself. This is why her public path appears steady, deliberate, almost immune to the unpredictability of modern life. Stability is not accidental here, it is cultivated with precision. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because the rules shaping Princess Leonor's future are not simply about tradition, but about modern governance. Spain's monarchy operates within a constitutional democracy, and that framework demands that the crown remain neutral, credible, and above controversy. Every expectation placed upon the future queen serves that purpose. Marriage, alliances, associations, even friendships are evaluated through the lens of institutional risk. But you have to wonder, how does one live authentically when neutrality itself becomes a lifelong requirement? This tension explains why the crown prioritizes preparation over spontaneity. Princess Leonor's education has been structured to emphasize history, law, military service, and international awareness. These are not symbolic credentials, they are safeguards. A queen who understands institutions is less likely to destabilize them. The monarchy invests in foresight because reaction is too late once trust is questioned. This philosophy quietly informs every stage of her development, even when it appears invisible to casual observers watching ceremonial moments without context. At this point, public curiosity often turns toward the personal, because audiences naturally seek the human story behind institutional roles. Yet the monarchy resists that impulse deliberately. By limiting personal narratives, the crown prevents premature identification of Princess Leonor as an individual rather than a future sovereign. This distinction matters deeply. A monarchy rooted in personality risks volatility, one rooted in role maintains continuity. And yet, you have to ask yourself, what happens when identity and institution begin to overlap in ways no protocol can fully separate? This careful distance is reinforced through messaging discipline. Statements, appearances, and official language consistently emphasize responsibility, service, and future duty. The absence of personal commentary is itself a signal, reminding the public that Princess Leonor's life is not a reality series but a constitutional journey. This approach preserves dignity while reducing speculation. It also teaches audiences how to interpret silence, not as secrecy but as structure. Still, curiosity remains, because silence invites imagination, and imagination often seeks answers beyond what is provided officially. The Crown understands this dynamic well. That is why it reinforces rules quietly rather than publicly defending them. When rules are explained too often, they appear fragile. When they are simply observed, they become normalized. Princess Leonor's conduct reflects this strategy perfectly. Her calm demeanor, controlled visibility, and consistent tone reinforce the idea that stability is not negotiable. But you have to wonder, as modern values emphasize openness, whether restraint will continue to resonate with younger generations who expect accessibility rather than distance. This is where royal rules serve a dual purpose. They protect the institution while educating the public indirectly. Over time, audiences come to expect restraint from the future queen, interpreting it as seriousness rather than limitation. This expectation becomes part of the monarchy's social contract. Princess Leonor is not asked to explain her role, she is asked to embody it. And embodiment is far more powerful than explanation when legitimacy is at stake in a symbolic institution that relies on perception as much as law. As scrutiny increases, so does anticipation. The closer Princess Leonor moves toward adulthood, the more questions arise about her future responsibilities. The monarchy prepares for this by reinforcing consistency. Every appearance reinforces a single narrative, readiness without haste. This balance reassures both domestic and international observers that Spain's monarchy remains anchored. But you have to ask, when preparation stretches across decades, how does one measure readiness without prematurely testing it in public arenas that offer little room for error? The answer lies in controlled exposure. Princess Leonor's engagements are carefully calibrated to introduce complexity gradually. Each new responsibility builds upon the last, ensuring that experience accumulates without overwhelming perception. This gradualism reflects institutional wisdom. Sudden transitions invite scrutiny, steady progression builds confidence. And yet, the most consequential expectations remain unseen, waiting for moments when private decisions intersect with public consequence in ways that history remembers far longer than any ceremony. Marriage remains the most powerful of those intersections. It symbolizes continuity, alliance, and future stability. This is why the Crown treats it not as romance, but as responsibility. For Princess Leonor, the expectations surrounding marriage are less about restriction and more about alignment. A future consort must support the institution without redefining it. That balance is delicate, and the rules exist to maintain it. But the question lingers quietly: can such balance be achieved without sacrifice that the public never fully sees or acknowledges? As this section closes, one thing becomes clear. The rules shaping Princess Leonor's future are not barriers placed in her path, but guideposts steering the monarchy toward continuity. They exist because history has shown what happens when preparation is abandoned. And while much remains unsaid, the direction is unmistakable. The Crown is not waiting to react, it is shaping outcomes long before they unfold. And that realization leads naturally to the next turning point, where expectation gives way to consequence, and preparation meets reality in ways that will define Spain's monarchy for generations to come. The focus now tightens, not on preparation, but on consequence, because rules only reveal their true power when they begin to limit outcomes rather than shape appearances. Princess Leonor, Princess of Asturias, is approaching the phase where expectations transform into obligations, and this transition is where monarchy reveals its most demanding nature. What once felt like guidance becomes requirement, and what seemed distant becomes unavoidable. This is the moment institutions prepare for most carefully, because it determines whether continuity holds under pressure. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because the Crown does not wait for crisis to define its boundaries. It anticipates them. The rules shaping Princess Leonor's future exist precisely because history shows that uncertainty around succession weakens public confidence. Spain's monarchy has survived by reducing ambiguity wherever possible. That includes personal decisions that, in any other life, would be private. But you have to wonder, how does one reconcile personal adulthood with a role that never truly allows separation between the self and the state? This is where the language surrounding Princess Leonor subtly shifts. As she grows older, references to preparation give way to references to responsibility. The tone becomes firmer, expectations clearer. This is not accidental. It signals that the crown sees her not as a future possibility, but as an emerging authority. That transition carries weight, because authority without clarity invites instability. And the monarchy's greatest fear is not criticism, but unpredictability. The public rarely sees how deeply succession planning influences daily decisions. From academic focus to international exposure, everything is evaluated for long-term impact. Princess Leonor's path reflects a commitment to continuity rather than personal distinction. This ensures that when she eventually assumes greater responsibility, her legitimacy feels earned, not inherited by chance. But you have to ask yourself, does such careful construction leave space for individuality, or does it deliberately subordinate it to institutional necessity? This is where royal rules become most visible, not through enforcement, but through expectation. They create an environment where deviation feels unnatural, even unnecessary. Princess Leonor's conduct suggests internalization rather than resistance. That matters, because legitimacy is strongest when rules are lived, not imposed. The monarchy depends on this internal alignment to avoid public confrontation. Quiet compliance preserves authority more effectively than visible correction ever could. Marriage, again, stands at the center of this conversation, because it represents permanence. Unlike appearances or statements, marriage reshapes perception for decades. The crown therefore treats it as a structural event, not a personal milestone. For Princess Leonor, this means that future choices will be evaluated for their impact on national stability. And you have to wonder, when permanence is unavoidable, how does one prepare emotionally for decisions that carry irreversible symbolic weight? This is why foreshadowing is essential. The monarchy introduces expectations gradually, allowing the public to absorb limits without shock. Silence plays a role here. By not discussing potential futures openly, the crown avoids creating narratives it cannot control. This absence of speculation is strategic. It prevents premature alignment with any particular outcome. And yet, the crown carries deeper implications than any single decision, because it binds personal destiny to national continuity in ways few roles ever demand. At this stage, the future queen's challenge is not visibility, but credibility. Spain's monarchy must demonstrate that it remains relevant without becoming reactive. Princess Leonor embodies that strategy through consistency. Each appearance reinforces a single message: readiness without urgency. This steadiness reassures a public accustomed to rapid change that the institution remains anchored. But the question lingers quietly: how long can restraint hold before expectation demands resolution? The crown answers this by extending preparation until it becomes normalization. Over time, the extraordinary becomes routine. Public audiences grow accustomed to discipline, interpreting it as seriousness rather than limitation. This recalibration of expectation is essential for long-term acceptance. Princess Leonor's life, carefully observed yet carefully protected, becomes a model of constitutional monarchy functioning as designed. But you have to ask, when everything is planned, where does spontaneity belong, if anywhere at all? This tension defines the modern monarchy. It must feel human without becoming familiar, relatable without becoming ordinary. Princess Leonor stands precisely at that threshold. Her youth offers relatability, while her training enforces distance. The rules shaping her future exist to maintain that balance. They are not meant to erase individuality, but to ensure it never overshadows the role. That distinction preserves continuity across reigns, regardless of personality or circumstance. As this section reaches its turning point, the scale of responsibility becomes unmistakable. Princess Leonor is not simply preparing for a title, she is preparing to embody an institution. Every rule, every expectation, every limitation serves that goal. The crown's success depends on how seamlessly she transitions from symbol to authority. And that transition is already underway, guided quietly by rules that rarely announce themselves but always define outcomes. What comes next will test whether preparation can withstand reality. Expectations will sharpen, scrutiny will intensify, and silence will become harder to maintain. The groundwork laid now will determine how resilient the monarchy remains when personal and public futures finally converge. And as that convergence approaches, one question remains unresolved: not about whether the rules exist, but how they will shape the moment when Princess Leonor steps fully into history, carrying Spain's monarchy forward under conditions no rehearsal can fully predict. The final stretch of this story unfolds quietly, without ceremony, because the most decisive moments in monarchy rarely arrive with fanfare. Princess Leonor, Princess of Asturias, stands on the edge of a future that is already taking shape, even if its most defining choices remain unspoken. By now, the rules are no longer abstract concepts or distant guidelines. They have become the environment in which her life operates, familiar, constant, and impossible to separate from who she is becoming. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because at this stage, the crown no longer needs to remind her of expectations. They are assumed. Preparation has done its work. The future queen moves within boundaries instinctively, understanding that stability depends on predictability. This is how monarchy survives modernity, not by resisting change, but by absorbing it without losing form. Yet you have to wonder, when expectation becomes instinct, does choice still feel like choice, or does it quietly transform into responsibility wearing a familiar face? The public often imagines that power begins at coronation, but in truth, authority begins much earlier, in the discipline to accept limits without resentment. Princess Leonor's greatest test may not be leadership itself, but consistency. Spain's monarchy does not need dramatic gestures, it needs reliability. Every rule shaping her future is designed to produce that outcome. In this sense, restraint is not weakness, but strength carefully cultivated over time. As attention grows and speculation inevitably circles, the crown relies on something deceptively simple: continuity. There is no rush to explain, no urgency to justify. The institution trusts its structure. Princess Leonor's steady presence reassures by its very normalcy. And yet, you have to ask yourself, in a world driven by immediacy, how long patience can survive before curiosity demands answers the monarchy is unwilling to provide. This is where silence once again becomes meaningful. Silence protects not only the future queen, but the monarchy itself. By withholding narrative, the crown avoids premature judgment. It allows Princess Leonor to mature without being frozen into expectation too early. This patience is strategic. History has shown that monarchies falter when heirs are overexposed before they are fully formed. Spain's approach reflects an awareness of that risk, choosing gradual confidence over instant familiarity. The rules governing Princess Leonor's future are therefore not obstacles, but timing mechanisms. They slow the pace of revelation, ensuring that legitimacy develops alongside authority. Marriage, public alignment, symbolic milestones, all are deferred until readiness is unquestionable. And you have to wonder, when the moment finally arrives, will it feel sudden, or will it feel inevitable, as though it had always been moving quietly toward that point? By now, the phrase royal rules no longer sounds restrictive. It sounds stabilizing. These rules are what allow Spain's monarchy to promise continuity without knowing every detail of the future. They create a framework flexible enough to endure change, yet firm enough to prevent fracture. Princess Leonor's life illustrates that balance. She is both individual and institution, modern and traditional, visible and protected. The deeper implication is this: monarchy survives not by bending to every expectation, but by choosing which expectations to meet. Spain's crown has chosen stability over spectacle. That choice defines how Princess Leonor is prepared, how her future is shaped, and how her eventual reign will be perceived. The public may not see every calculation, but it will feel the result in the form of confidence rather than uncertainty. As the years progress, Princess Leonor will assume more responsibility, not suddenly, but seamlessly. Each transition will appear natural because it has been rehearsed through discipline. This is how legitimacy renews itself, not through declaration, but through continuity that feels earned. And still, you have to ask, when preparation has been so thorough, what remains unpredictable in a life governed by rules? The answer lies in the human element. No system can fully account for emotion, circumstance, or history unfolding in real time. The rules exist to manage risk, not eliminate it. Princess Leonor's challenge will be to inhabit those rules without disappearing into them. To lead without dominating. To represent without performing. To remain human while carrying a symbol that transcends any single life. This balance will define her reign long before it officially begins. Spain's monarchy is not waiting for coronation to measure success, it is measuring alignment now. Every calm appearance, every disciplined silence, every avoided controversy contributes to a reservoir of trust. That trust is the true inheritance being built, far more valuable than ceremony or tradition alone. As this chapter closes, one realization stands above the rest. The rules shaping Princess Leonor's future are not about control, but about continuity. They exist so that Spain's monarchy can outlast moments, personalities, and uncertainty. They ensure that when change comes, it arrives within a structure strong enough to absorb it. And yet, the story is far from finished. Because rules prepare, but they do not decide. At some point, preparation meets reality, and the future queen must step fully into her role under circumstances no one can completely predict. When that moment arrives, it will test not just her readiness, but the resilience of the system that shaped her. The next chapter will explore how that system extends beyond Spain's borders, shaping Princess Leonor for global diplomacy, international scrutiny, and the quiet power of representation on the world stage, where the rules are less visible but the stakes are even higher.